Welcome to Stirring Up Talk with Gecko Hospitality, the podcast where hospitality experts meets real-world success.
Morgan, how are you doing?
Good. I want to say thank you for coming on Stirring Up Talk.
Sure.
And before we get started, can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yes, absolutely. So, like Morgan said, my name is Megan Applegate, and I have been a hospitality professional, was about 20 years, in and around hotels, mainly in the Florida market, and then moved up here to Charlotte, with my husband and my son, and then got into another hotel for about 5 years. So a total of about 20, and then I finally kind of hit my wall and got the opportunity to move into the recruiting space with hospitality. So I live in Charlotte, North Carolina now, and I have been doing the recruiting and some resume writing for about 6 or 7 years now.
That's impressive. So now I'm going to jump right into it and
Okay,
ask some questions about your career journey and some turning points.
sure.
So what inspired you to start your career in hospitality?
Honestly, I got inspired not. I actually have a hospitality degree. I went to school at Central Michigan University where I grew up in Michigan, and I didn't really know what I wanted to do. And when I finally got to probably my sophomore year, I realized that there was an industry where I could work where people vacationed. And honestly, like that was like my turning point of like, I just don't know what I want to do. I've always been like kind of a warm weather girl. I didn't like the snow. And so when I realized I could get in to an industry where people were having fun, and they were enjoying themselves on vacationing, and I realized that like hospitality was an actual industry, that's when it like I got the bug and I started my journey with that degree, and then from there found myself immediately in Florida and not leaving.
And that makes sense. Who can say no to
Yeah.
the warm weather?
Yeah. I mean, some people love it, some people don't. I have the best of both worlds now here in North Carolina.
Yeah,
But
absolutely.
yeah. So that's kind of where I started with hospitality.
Yeah. And was there a defining moment that made you say, like, this is it?
There's a defining moment, but I think that when I had to do an internship way back when, and I got an opportunity to go to Amelia Island Plantation. Actually, I think it's an Omni now, but down in the Jacksonville Amelia Island resort out there, I had to do an internship, and I was there for a little over 6 months. And I mean, and I was obviously very young, early 20s, and it was such a time for me to realize that hospitality is all about people, and experiences and family. And it's really been like that, really my whole career of moving around within the hotel and hospitality world, that I just was like, this is where I belong. This is my family. And then I just didn't leave. I got a job right away. I'm staying in Florida down in West Palm. So I think that it happened for me really early in my career with hospitality.
And that's important to love what you do.
Right, absolutely.
And was there someone who influenced your decision the most to continue in the hospitality industry?
I don't know that I would say there was one particular person. It was groups of people,
Hmm.
honestly. It wasn't like one person that was like, this is what you should do. It was more of, it felt so like team oriented, and everything that I did, I got, so many opportunities, especially, and I was on the east side of Florida. So I got to be at the Breakers Resort, which is a huge, really luxury 5-star property there. Learned so much about, that kind of style. And then went to St. Augustine, and I worked for Kessler at the Casa Monica Hotel, which is a completely different version of what that was. Probably my favorite property to work at in all of my career. So I don't know that I have one person that's been like a mentor. It's really been all my experiences have kind of shifted me into like, there's just nothing else I can think of that I would want to do differently. Even now in recruiting, it's like I can't imagine recruiting for any other industry but hospitality, because
Yeah.
it's in me. It's
in
in
your
my heart
blood.
and in my soul. Yeah, I mean, it is what it is. So, hopefully that answers your question.
It does. And hospitality is full of surprises. What's one unforgettable story from your career that taught you some valuable lessons?
I mean, the hospitality industry is so wild. I mean,
It is.
it is so wild. Most of my experience has been on the event side of sales and planning and catering. So I spent a ton of time um, with social events, weddings. You know, when I got to Charlotte, all kinds of huge, 500-person Indian weddings. I got to learn that
Wow.
culture. I lived in Miami for a long time, and so, dealing with the quinceañeras, and that was a whole nother, ball game to learn about. And I think there's so many crazy stories that happened, but I think the one thing that I learned very quickly, especially in that particular silo and segment of the industry, is that with events, there is no I, right? And I think that flows throughout hospitality if you think about it, but especially with events, those that are control freaks, you have to let go and you have to be able to trust that, like, you can't have a flawless event unless you can trust your partners and your team. And I think that was really huge lesson that I learned. And then you have to like think really quickly with problem solving, because there is an event that I've ever done that didn't have something come up that was unexpected. So I
Yeah.
think for me, those were all valuable lessons of, drop the I, because it just doesn't work, and you have to really be able to trust your partners.
I like that you said drop the I.
Yeah,
I
drop
think
the
that's so
I.
important.
Mm-hmm.
Just like there's
It
no,
really is. It really is, because hospitality is all about experiences, right? And so, like, you can't do that alone. You can be a part of it, but you can't do it alone. So you have to learn that quickly.
sure. And how do you think that experience shaped you in the way you approach things as a recruiter today?
I think that being in the recruiter seat these days, it still takes a team. And I think one of the biggest things I've learned being a recruiter is that, we don't always have a lot of control over what our candidates or our clients decide to do. There's certain things you can do to kind of influence them and get ahead of the game. But there's a lot of, again, relying on your own team and really finding that you have to get people to trust you with being a recruiter, and that it's another just industry of, like, you cannot do this alone. There, you have to rely on a lot of things and anticipate, all kinds of different things that can get in your way to help navigate not only you, so, for your success, but the success with your client and your candidates.
For sure. And what advice would you give someone facing a similar situation to if your younger self?
My younger self?
Yeah.
Oh gosh. I would say one of the most valuable things I've learned is no matter what you're doing, you need to understand the entire operation of what it is, right? So, like, with events for me when I was younger, it took me a while to kind of get to where I understood there's so many different moving parts of that. You could be the person that sells it, you could be the person that's writing the menu and cooking the food, you can be the person that is, in the operations that logistically is, working through the event. But the best thing you can do is really understand the entire operation. And I think the same thing goes true for recruiting, where you can't just be good at getting clients. You can't just be good at, talking to candidates. You have to really understand the full life cycle of what you're doing or not recreation, but with recruiting. Learning that is something I would tell myself at a younger age.
Yeah, I feel like I've heard that a lot. You have
Mhm.
to be good at all three things, not just
You do,
one.
right. And, especially for people that, come from an operational background in hospitality versus a sales side where, that was more my focus. It's hard, but it's doable. And you just have to kind of find what you're good at, and then whatever you don't have the strength at, get some help, hire somebody to help you learn how to do it,
Mhm.
take lessons, any of that, to just get you where you need to be so that you can.
Absolutely. So we're going to kind of switch gears a little bit and talk about industry insights and growth. What's your top tip for someone looking to grow their career in the hospitality industry?
Um, I would say try everything.
Try
And
everything.
try everything, hospitality, right? Like most people are like, well, that's, parties. I'm like, well, yeah, sure, that it does include parties, but there's so many different variations of hospitality that you can get into. Like I was saying, are you more suited for like true operational or management, or is it the sales side? Or is it the creative side? And so is it food and beverage? There's so many different variations of what hospitality is that you might really find that you love one versus the other, and you don't know what that is until you really get into it and understand it and try all of the things.
Absolutely. That's great advice to give someone that, like, especially like a younger self, someone my age.
Hmm.
Yeah. And are there any specific skills or certifications you recommend for someone looking to get in?
Hospitality, or just, yes, I don't know that I would say certifications off the bat. I mean, obviously you can get a hospitality degree, even an associate's degree, but truthfully, I mean, experience trumps all of that.
Yeah.
In my experience, as a recruiter, we do obviously recruit for upper management and management or above. So we're not always working with the entry level or mid management, but most always it's all about the experience that they're looking for. Not a lot of times we get somebody that says, hey, I have to have somebody with a hospitality degree. So although I wouldn't tell anyone not to do that, because education is always going to be important and it will bump you up over anyone else that doesn't have it. But I would say, the experience is crucial, and it really kind of depends on the silo of hospitality you're going into. With me, I was in sales and catering for so long. I got involved with association called NACE, National Association of Catering and Events, and they had their own certification, CPCE. And so I went ahead and got that. And I will say that that helped me get promotions and move up through the ranks pretty quickly. I know there's a certification for food and beverage management professionals. So if you can kind of define what your lane is,
Mhm.
and really kind of hone in specifically, I would say that probably would be better versus like, it could even be like, that's the thing about hospitality. You have HR,
Yeah.
you've got a county, you've got a controller, where like having, certifications with that might help you, that still fits within the hospitality industry. Sense.
Absolutely. And what's one common mistake you see people make when trying to advance in the hospitality field?
The biggest hurdle as a recruiter in hospitality is length of stay, of tenure of people. I think, even today, if you look at 5, 6 years ago, it was, 2 years here, 3 years here, 2 years here. Ever since COVID, we really kind of are dealing with so many jumps around 1 year, 8 months,
Mhm.
1 year. And as much as, we wish that our clients sometimes would understand that that's, kind of the generation that's coming up in the workplace, that's important to them to kind of move around. It's still a fairly big hurdle. So advice from making those decisions is really making sure that, if you're going to take a job, that, I know things can come up, but that you plan to be there for 2 or 3 years, because it's important, for just in general, to get your experience, to really understand. So I would say really make sure, if you're going to take a new job, that it is truly something that you want to stick around for, and you're not doing it because there's a little bit more money, or, that kind of thing, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. And how do you see the future of hospitality evolving, especially with trends like personalized guest experience and tech integration?
That's a big one. I mean, obviously, technology is not new, but we've been doing, moving in that direction for a long time. I think the AI and the data analytics piece is really what's going to push some of that personalization and style to a new level. When I say that, it doesn't necessarily mean that we will all just be checked in by a robot. What I'm kind of seeing will happen is that instead of we just kind of being like personalization, it's like super hyper personalization where
Mm.
you've got the ability now to really use AI with the data and analytics from people's past days and all the information that you can gather and really bump that experience to a new level. Meaning, instead of having somebody that's behind the front desk checking people in, you know, move to something like that you can do from a digital point of view and not have the human interaction, but don't eliminate the job, right? I think it's all about what can we do then to create an even more personalized, customized experience, because that's really what hospitality is all about your experience and creating memorable moments. And when people have those and it feels human, because you can't take that away from hospitality. You can never do that. But I do feel like there's a lot of things that we can do as an industry to truly start to like, even if it's like I had a friend of mine that made some, corn salsa the other day that he brought over to a party, and it was like, Megan, I put the cilantro on the side just because I know you didn't like it for, and made it for the whole party. And I
Yeah,
was just like, that's a feeling. That's like, wow, like he knew that. And he thought of me while he was
absolutely.
making this to feed an entire, group of 20 people at a party just so that I could eat it. And it's those kinds of things that I think that like really leave marks on people, and hospitality has got the ability to really define that with the way that the digital products are going.
Yeah, that story was amazing. It's the little things.
It is. It really is.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was just like, it's so small, but I was like, wow, like I feel thought
You
of
feel
and valued
special.
and special that he even remembered that about me, you
Yeah,
know? Yeah.
absolutely. And that's what hospitality is about. When you go to a restaurant, when you're celebrating your kid's birthday, you go there every year. That's your
Right.
child's favorite place to eat.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
Yes. So I think that that in itself, will really define what we can do for guests and that experience across hospitality, as long as it doesn't go the opposite way, right? And we just integrate a very like impersonal experience.
Yeah.
It has to be a balance. Yes, make it convenient. But there's even things that like, I'm sure that's moving in even a guest room if you think about it, like to temperature control and like silent music that you can have on for somebody or their favorite type of cookie. I mean, there's so many things that you can do that I think it's a good direction as long as we don't go too far on the non-personalization, or I'm sorry, and the non-human like.
Absolutely. And is there one hospitality trend that you're excited to see in the near future?
I guess I would say really just what we talked about.
Yeah.
So I think that especially with events, my whole footprint within hospitality was really strategic in the hotel and the catering and the sales side. But so I'm very kind of like, I didn't do food service, although I have very a good knowledge creating menus and working with the kitchen and the chefs. For me, I think just seeing what else can be done by
Yeah.
from a digital point of view when it comes to the surprise and element and themes within that silo of, it used to be like, what was it called? Projection mapping, where, then that's very AV tech oriented, where there was just things projected all over the ceiling and the walls. And I thought that was so cool. And these days, I mean, if you think about what's the new place in Las Vegas everyone's talking about? Is it called the Sphere?
I know what you're
Where
talking about, but I forgot.
I think it's called the Sphere or something like that. Maybe I'm wrong, but there's, it's the theater. It's like one of the big productions. I think Backstreet Boys was out there. I obviously haven't been, but I've seen it on social media, and that alone is like, holy crap, right? Like that
Yeah,
is a
our
crazy
production is gonna get
experience.
crazy in
It's going to get
hospitality.
production is going to get insane with what can happen. So I think that excites me just
Yeah.
because that was my life for so long of, seeing things come to life in real time with whether it be a wedding or a themed party for a corporate or whatever, I think it'll get really neat.
Sure. And we're going to talk about your experience at Gecko Hospitality.
Okay.
How did Gecko Hospitality make your job search experience stand out?
I think the job search piece for me was really creating true relationships. I think that allowed me to trust the process and really feel like I wasn't just a number or you know, the number in what is the wheel, cooks in the wheel or what have you, that like I really was valued and very well taken care of. I wasn't just a number, I would say.
Yeah, I like that. Not just a
Mhm.
number. That's important to feel that way too.
It is, yes.
And how did their approach different from other recruitment experiences you've had?
That's a good question. And honestly, I think I've only had one other experience, and
Okay.
it came from an internal recruiter. So it wasn't a third party. I truthfully didn't know what that process looked like until my husband, I was kind of considering leaving something right before I got into this, and he connected me actually with Joan, and which is how we got involved, who owns the restaurant side of North Carolina. And I talked to her a little bit about what I was looking for, and we didn't really get through the process though because there just wasn't anything that I wanted. And then
Hmm.
it shifted into, would you ever consider doing this? So I don't know that I could answer that truthfully because I don't have anything to compare it
That's
to.
okay. And what's one thing you learned about the recruitment process through Gecko Hospitality that surprised you?
How many steps there is to complete in a full cycle of the process. I think, without having any knowledge of true recruiting prior with being a hospitality person, that, stepping to be on the other side, I think it was an eye opener for me to see what the experience was like for the candidates,
Hmm.
and that it's not easy being a recruiter, honestly. I mean, you'd think that we're just middleman, that we kind of like ship people around, but truthfully, there's a lot of things that go into it, a lot of logistics, a lot of scheduling, and it's a lot of getting to know truthfully what people want to do, because it's like I said, what we don't want to see is a lot of job hoppers. So kind of diving down into the recruitment process from a personalized standpoint is important when you're talking with candidates. So, kind of figuring that piece out, and realizing that it's it's not a quick process, and there's a lot of feelings that are involved, truthfully.
Yeah.
And I think that that comes up too, where I spend so much time now in the career development and job hunting space that, I feel like people are, I was lucky. I never really had too much of a bad experience when I was looking for jobs. But a lot of people out there struggle, especially, from layoffs or unexpected things that happen in their lives, and having the empathy and understanding that candidates, like I said, aren't just a number, and there really is a lot of emotion and personal, sometimes despair that especially if they've been looking for a long time, of learning how to manage that. And I wasn't expecting that either.
Yeah.
So that's something we definitely talk to our recruiters about, because we want to be upbeat and we want to be happy and we want to get them excited. But at the same time, you got to understand their why.
Yeah. I like that you said you have to understand their why as well. And what advice would you give someone working with a recruiter for the first time?
Transparency is probably
Transparency.
it. Yeah, I would say that's the number one thing. We like, for our team, like, we understand that if you truly are looking for a job, I mean, we work with a lot of people that aren't, right? Like, that's kind of our main goal, is to find passive candidates that aren't, applying to other places or working with other recruiters. But let's face it, there's a lot of people that don't have jobs that are great candidates as well. And so, you know, if you're going to work with the recruiter, understand that we don't have the magic bullet all the time. It really varies on, especially as a third party, what we're working on. So unfortunately, it doesn't mean there's a complete amazing match. But if you are working through the process with somebody, I think if you're talking to another recruiter, if you're in negotiations somewhere else, just be honest. For the most part, a good recruiter is going to have your best interest in mind and is not going to try and talk you into doing something that only benefits them. If that's the case, then that's not a good recruiter. But I think, having that open communication and transparency on both sides is like the best relationship and equals the most amount of success.
Absolutely. I've heard that a lot from other people, just building good communication.
Right. Yeah. I mean, because that's truthfully like the biggest part of what we do is going back and forth and talking to them about this, and then, negotiation, and we play so many different wear so many different hats in that, when somebody just kind of disappears or isn't being truthful for us. We've had that happen recently where somebody got all the way through this very, very long process with a company, got hired. We thought everything was great. She had like a 2-week, 3-week because she was moving. And we got a call from, the client saying, just keeping you in the loop. I don't know if you know, but so-and-so just rescinded and declined the offer because she took something else. And that's really hard because not only did we lose that, which, kind of stinks, but it wasn't even us that had that information, and so I think being able to talk to your recruiter and tell them, hey, like, this is what's going on. It's just a better opportunity. Like, that would be much better than having to hear it on the back end and being like, what are you talking about? I just talked to her and she said everything was great, right? So that transparency is key.
Absolutely. And are you ready for some rapid fire?
Sure.
Okay. Would you rather always be 10 minutes late or always be 20 minutes early?
Oh, geez. I am notoriously late. So I would say that I would want to be 20 minutes early, but I know me, so we're going to go with 10 minutes late. I'm sorry, 20 minutes early, but we're going to say I'm going to be late because there's just no way.
We get it.
Yeah.
Things happen.
Yes.
Never use social media again or never watch TV again?
Never use social media again.
I love my Love Island.
But I mean, I will say, I didn't grow up with the social media, didn't have a cell phone until I was like 20. I use it for business more than I do for my own pleasure. And if I did not have to do that, I would not.
Sunrise or sunset?
Sunset.
Dog or cat?
I have both, but I will go with dog.
Love dogs. They're so cute.
Yeah.
On the scale 1 to 10, how much do you love Gecko Hospitality? That's what we like to hear.
Yeah, no, I am so grateful for the opportunity to get involved with them. And partly because we're such, the same-minded professionals, and we have the same goal to make each other successful, which helps candidates, which helps, everybody around us. So, I never saw this path for me. I would say 7 years ago, this was not an opportunity or a thing. So, it's not easy, but if I'm going to do it with anybody, Gecko's the way to go.
Absolutely. Megan, it was a pleasure talking to you. Thank you for coming on.
You're welcome, Morgan. Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Okay, so it's